Alive and alert on the north side of the dirt. It is your man D Real coming at you with another Be Real with D Real, where edutainment is what I do. Still. And wait till the championship stuff, the Super Bowl champion stuff get here. So just you put it out of your head. Don't trip. Don't worry about it. It's so fresh, so clean. I've worn this before. Yeah. It's just cheap stuff. Anyway, welcome to another Be Real with D Real, where edutainment is what I do. Today is a good day for a Black History moment. And I'm not going to be giving a Black History moment on just anything or anybody. I'm going to be giving a Black History moment on the Harlem Hellfighters, the 369th Infantry. During World War II, you don't know anything about the Harlem Hellfighters, don't worry about it. I got you. Here's what we're going to do before we get off into what we normally get off into. I need y'all to do what you always do for your mans and them. Comment, like, subscribe, and share the Be Real with D Real page so that when new material comes out, you get it. If you're digging what a brother's shoveling, put some dirt in my bucket. Comment, like, subscribe, and share the Be Real with D Real page. Who are you? Remember that caterpillar that was smoking on a hookah during on Alice in Wonderland? A-E-I-O. Anyway, see how we become institutionalized with crazy, weird stuff just in your brain. Anywho, the Harlem Hellfighters, courtesy of Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. The 369th Regiment originally formed as the 15th New York National Guard Regiment before being reorganized as the 369th upon federalization, and commonly referred to as the Harlem Hellfighters, was an infantry regiment of the New York Army National Guard during World War I and World War II. The regiment consisted mainly of African Americans, though it also included men from Puerto Rico, Cuba, Guyana, Liberia, Portugal, Canada, the West Indies, as well as American white officers. With the 370th Infantry Regiment, it was known for being one of the first African American regiments to serve with the American Expeditionary Forces during World War during World War I. American Expeditionary Forces means they went overseas and fought. I have an Expeditionary Medal for Desert Storm. The regiment was named the Black Rattlers after arriving in France by its commander, Colonel William Hayward. The nickname Men of Bronze was given to the regiment by the French after they had witnessed the gallantry of the Americans fighting in the trenches. Legend has it that they were called the Hellfighters, Hallenkampfer in German, by the German enemy, although there is no documentation of this, and the moniker may have been a creation of the American press. During World War I, the 369th spent 191 days in frontline trenches, more than any other American unit. They also suffered the most losses of any American regiment, with 1,500 casualties. The regiment was also the first of the Allied forces to cross the Rhine into Germany. There goes some of the Harlem Hellfighters right there. Question: do y'all like it when people colorize black and white pictures, or do you prefer black and white pictures to stay black and white? Me personally, I think black and white pictures have more clarity. Now, regardless of that gear you saw, this was what the Harlem Hellfighters would rock into battle. This was standard infantry uniform, as well as what they call an Adrian helmet. Kind of has that pith hat shape to it, but it's made out of metal. So there you go. That's a nice interesting depiction of a Harlem Hellfighter. Also, there's a Harlem Hellfighter documentary on the History Channel. They're probably playing it this month because, yeah, it's their month. So we got to find material that caters to them. So whether or not they're doing it because it's heartfelt or doing it because they feel some sort of obligation to participate, yeah, you got a documentary about them on the History Channel, and you should check that out. Also, too, graphic novel of the Harlem Hellfighters by Max Brooks, name you might recognize as the author of, yep, you guessed it, World War Z. This book is in black and white. So a lot of the details that are kind of gory don't seem as gory because it's in black and white. I mean, we fight. You know what I'm saying? We fight. Let me show you something. Check out what the Harlem Hellfighters motto is. Let's expand on that a little bit. See what that say? Their motto is "Don't tread on me," and goddamn, let's go. Excuse my profanity, but I mean, sounds like business, don't it? A lot of engagements, as you can see, also active during World War II. But let's find out about this kind of stuff that was going on with their background. On October 5th, 1917, Emmett J. Scott, longtime secretary to Booker T. Washington, was appointed special assistant to Newton D. Baker, the Secretary of War. Scott was to serve as a confidential advisor in situations that involved the well-being of 10 million African Americans and their roles in the war. While many African Americans who served in the Great War believed racial discrimination would dissipate once they returned home, that did not happen. Racism after World War I was probably at its worst until the start of World War II. Although many African Americans were eager to fight in the war, they were often turned away from military service. When the United States realized that they did not have enough when the United States realized that it did not have close to enough soldiers, it decided to pass the Selective Service Act of 1917, which required all men from the ages of 21 to 30 to register for the draft. This included African Americans. Many African Americans enlisted believing that their military service would give them the opportunity to change the way they were perceived by white Americans. We all know how that turned out, don't we? We know exactly how that shit turned out. World War I. The 369th Regiment was constituted on June 1913 in the New York Army National Guard as the 15th New York Infantry Regiment. The 369th was organized on June 29th, 1916 in New York City. The infantry was called into federal service on July 25th, 1917 at Camp Whitman, New York. While at Camp Whitman, the 369th Infantry learned basic military practices. After their training at Camp Whitman, the 369th was called into active duty in New York. While in New York, the 369th's 3 battalions were spread throughout New York, where they guarded rail lines, construction sites, and other camps. Then, on October 8th, 1917, the regiment traveled to Camp Wadsworth in Spartanburg, South Carolina, where they received training in actual combat. Camp Wadsworth was set up similar to the French battlefields. While at Camp Wadsworth, they experienced significant racism from the local communities and from other units. there was one incident in which two soldiers from the 15th Regiment, Lieutenant James Reese Europe and Noble Sissel, were refused by the owner of a hotel shop when they attempted to buy a newspaper. Several soldiers from the white 27th Division, a New York National Guard organization, came to stand with and support their fellow New York soldiers. Lieutenant Europe, however, directed them to leave before violence erupted. There were many other shops that refused to sell goods to the members of the 15th Regiment. So members of the 27th Division told the shop owners if they did not serve black soldiers, they can close their stores and leave town. The white soldiers then stated, "There are buddies, and we won't buy from men who treat them unfairly." Is that right? Huh. Okay. So what that says to me is not all white people are racist. Okay. And maybe the ones that aren't racist are filled with guilt. No, maybe some people are just decent human beings and know right from wrong and choose right instead of being assholes. Right? Now, about the Harlem Hellfighters serving the longest in the trenches, that's no joke, y'all. I have seen that overseas. I have seen that during Desert Storm. I have seen that wherever the fighting's the hottest, that's where you're going to find our black ass. Okay? Wherever there's a potential to get your arm, your leg, your head blown off, that is where you will find the majority of us. You see what I'm saying? So, and this is World War I when they put us in the trenches and said stay there for 191 days. That hasn't changed. That's the crazy part. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think it's so much racism as it is classism, because a lot of people who join the military and become enlisted, or even worse, infantry, they are not of a high social status, regardless of what color they are. They are just average, everyday working people. And in some cases, some people who live below the poverty line and they don't have any other way to survive. You know, I grew up poor, and the whole thing about that was when I graduated high school, I was told, go to college, go to the military. You can't stay here. I'm not going to raise a grown ass man. So I went to the military. You know what I mean? It is what it is, though. The Harlem Hellfighters and their situation is merely a symptom of a larger problem that persists in this country. I mean, I get it. Not everybody is that way, but you got to open your eyes to the fact everybody ain't not that way either. You know, you do have actual racists, but racism ain't what I'm here to talk about, at least not today. Back to the Harlem Hellfighters. Assignment to the French Army in 1918. That was also the year World War I ended, if I'm not mistaken. The U.S. Army decided on April 8, 1918, to assign the unit to the French Army for the duration of American participation in the war because many white American soldiers refused to perform combat duty with African Americans. Really? I ain't gonna die side by no darky. It might rub off on me. Are you serious? Okay, the white people back then should have thought more like gladiator times. Those of us who are about to die salute you. You're all the same. You in the trenches, you ain't got no color except red. You know what I mean? You're not, I don't even see the racism is a horrible, horrible, horrible thing. It reminds me of the Defiant ones. If you've ever seen the Defiant ones with Sidney Poitier and Tony Curtis, basically two convicts chained up, ball and chain with each other, one black, one white. Even in that situation, you still being a damn racist. It's you're trying to escape, but you're worried about being chained to an N-word. If you get a chance, check out the Defiant ones with Sidney Poitier and Tony Curtis. It's a pretty good movie for its time. Let's read on. Men were issued French weapons, helmets, belts, and pouches, although they continued to wear their U.S. uniforms. Couldn't even get effing equipment from our own people. Ain't that a bitch? While in the United States, the 369th Regiment was subjected to intense racial discrimination, and its members looked down upon. French Colonel J.L.A. Leinard of the American Expeditionary Forces headquarters was persuaded to write the notorious pamphlet, Secret Information Concerning Black American Troops, which warned French civilian authorities of the alleged inferior nature and supposed racist tendencies of African Americans. All you got to do is go to the United States during that time and see who was racist and who wasn't. You know what I'm saying? In France, the 369th was treated as if they were no different than any other French unit. What? So you're saying to me that black soldiers, for the most part, were treated better by the French army than they were by the American army? WTF. Let's read on. The French accepted the all-black 369th Regiment with open arms and welcomed them to their country. The French army had from the start included many colonial units with non-white personnel from, among others, Morocco and Senegal. Also, since they faced manpower shortages, they were less concerned with race than the Americans. The 369th Regiment was relieved May 8, 1918, from assignment to the 185th Infantry Brigade and went into the trenches as part of the French 16th Division. It served continuously from July 3rd before returning to combat in the Second Battle of Marne. Later, the 369th was reassigned to General Labou's 161st Division to participate in the Allied counterattack. On one tour, they were out for over 6 months, which was the longest deployment of any unit in World War II. On August 19th, the regiment went off the line for rest and training of replacements. While overseas, the Hellfighters saw enemy propaganda intended for them. It claimed Germans had done nothing wrong to blacks and they should be fighting the USA, which had oppressed them for years. It had the opposite of the intended effect. On September 25th, 1918, the French Fourth Army went on the offensive in conjunction with the American drive in the Meuse-Argonne. The 369th turned in a good account in heavy fighting, though they sustained severe losses. The unit captured the important village of Seychelles. At one point, the 369th advanced faster than French troops on their right and left flanks and risked being cut off. By the time the regiment pulled back for reorganization, it had advanced 14 kilometers through severe German resistance. In mid-October, the regiment was moved to a quiet sector of Vosges and was stationed there on 11 November, the day of armistice, and what we know now today as Veterans Day. 6 days later, the 369th made its last advance, and on November 26th, reaching the banks of the River Rhine and becoming the first Allied unit to do so. The regiment was relieved on December 12, 1918, from assignment to the French 161st. It returned to New York port of embarkation and was demobilized on February 28, 1919, at Camp Upton at Yaphank, New York, and returned to the New York Army National Guard. Okay, these are the honors that were bestowed upon the Harlem Hellfighters. 1 Medal of Honor and numerous distinguished service crosses were awarded to the regiment. Perhaps the most celebrated man in the 369th was Private Henry Johnson, a former Albany, New York rail station porter who earned the nickname Black Death for his actions in combat in France. In May 1918, Johnson and Private Needham Roberts fought off a 24-man gun patrol, though they were both severely wounded. Don't tell me nothing about how brothers get down. Johnson instructed Roberts to warn the French units of the approaching patrol, but Roberts returned to him after the Germans opened fire on their position. They battled together until a German grenade incapacitated Roberts, at which point Johnson made it his mission to hold the line and protect his fellow soldiers. After they expended their ammunition, Johnson battled with grenades, then the butt of his rifle, and finally with a bolo knife. Reports suggest Johnson killed at least 4 German soldiers and might have wounded 30 others while sustaining at least 21 injuries. Over 100 men from the 369th were presented with American and or French decorations. Among these honors, Johnson was the first American to receive the Croix de Guerre. On 13 December 1918, 1 month after Armistice Day, the French government awarded the Croix de Guerre to 170 individual members of the 369th, and a unit citation was awarded to the entire regiment. It was pinned to the unit's colors by General LeBoeuf. Bruh. That's all I got to say about the 369th. I mean, I could go into a lot of different things about how they were treated when they came back to the United States, but I don't want to sully what's went forth already. That's it for now. That has been your Black History Moment. But fret not. I will be coming at you with another one of them other ones. And until I do, y'all be good, be so good to each other.